What is going on, guys, and welcome back once again. My name is Jordan, also known as J Monster, and I hope you guys are having an excellent weekend. Today I have for you our tactics video for the clans of the Enedwaith. This is a minor faction inside of the DAC submod for 3rd Age Total War. The format of this video is going to be, we're going to take a close look at the stats and just general usability of a number of different units inside of this faction. I've given you a small kind of subset that I found to be the most useful in my experiences with this faction, and we're going to go into a little bit of tactics, army composition, how best to position your units, and things like that. And then finally, we're going to wrap it all up with a big epic battle at the finish. We're going to be playing on the Fords of Eisen against a numerically superior and statistically superior force. We're going to be fighting a couple of Gondor armies, but let's get right into it. One of the first units I have for you today are the Moot Wardens. These guys are very excellent. You can see their stats just up there in the corner. The biggest advantage of this unit is the fact that they have the very long spears trait, as well as the fact that they have shields, which gives them a lot more survivability than you would expect. It does eliminate one of the biggest weaknesses of pikemen, that being that they are extremely vulnerable to missiles. These guys having the added shield just makes them that much harder to kill, and it makes it a lot more feasible to leave them within range of your enemy's archers without having to worry about a ton of casualties being inflicted on them, at least from the front. So over here we have a unit of Talon Knights, and they have double the stats of our units. In terms of pure numbers, there's absolutely no reason why we should come out of this fight on top. But let's speed it up and let's see what happens. You can see the very long spears trait here in action. So you can see that victory is certain for these guys. They're doing very well right now. We are not losing too many of our troops, though, even on the charge. Again, the very long spears trait. And the fact that they are spears does help turn the formidable charge bonus that these units receive back against them. And they're just not having a very good time of it. It says that now the forces of battle are equally matched. Victory is apparently still certain for them. You can watch these guys just start to fall apart. Now let's speed that up just a little bit. Yeah, now they're going to try and feint and try to sucker us out of position. We're not going to go for it, though. As long as you can keep your spears down and keep your formation intact, there's not a lot that this unit cannot accomplish when being attacked from the front. So as you can see, they lost they've lost so many troops here. I'm not entirely sure how many they started with in the unit, but we started with 115. So we've lost 15 fairly cheap in comparison units to this unit of Talon Knights right here. And they're just going to repeatedly charge us, and it's going to be the same result over and over and over. There goes their general. It's just going to be a bad result for these Talon Knights overall. So let's take a look at one of the next units here. But just a quick note on the Moot Wardens. They make a very solid battle line. I absolutely recommend taking between 4 and 5 of them to try and fill out your roster. The clans of the Enedwaith do have some other heavy infantry options. But make no mistake, they are by and large not nearly as good as the infantry of other factions. They do actually get beat out by the infantry of other orcish factions. So these guys, they can be rewarding but very frustrating to play because you need to take a combined arms approach to any engagement. You need to be able to position yourself well and use the strengths of your units to overcome the challenges posed by these much better trained, better equipped enemy units, such as the Talon Knights here. If there was more of them, we would have some options here if we had some other units in play to take these guys out very, very quickly and very, very cheaply in comparison to the costs of the units that we use to accomplish that. One final note is that because they are pikemen and they are relying on their formation, they are very vulnerable to being flanked or hit from behind. They are also extremely vulnerable to units like trolls and Mumakil, which can throw them around and break up their wall, allowing infantry to get into the gaps and slaughter these guys. If the Talon Knights were able to exploit a gap in our line, they would destroy us, and it would not take very long. So you need to be very aware of that when playing as this faction. The next unit we have is one of the few truly heavily armored units available to this faction. I believe they have head and shoulders above the next unit. High defense values. Their movement speed is pretty good, their morale is excellent, and they are extremely versatile in that they have spears available to them, so that if they were to be charged by cavalry, for example, assuming you had them in loose formation and the unit wasn't entirely wiped out, the cavalry would be in for a bit of a nasty surprise because they have big, powerful two-handed spears. But in addition to that, their most useful function is their javelins, which are armor-piercing and extremely damaging. And of course, these are the Guardians of the Enedwaith. They are a high-tier unit, hard to get in your faction, or in your campaign with this faction. But if you are playing any multiplayer games, these guys are obviously going to be readily available to you. They are pretty expensive, at least as far as the rest of the Enedwaith roster goes, weighing in at about 1,008 florins for a single unit unupgraded. But they are definitely worth your money to take. I would try to take, in ideal circumstances, between 2 and 3 units of these, because they are just so good and very excellent at blunting enemy charges. So let's take a look here. These are the Smiths of Eregion, very heavily armored, very elite, extremely high tier elven units, and these guys have an excellent range, so they're going to get a number of volleys off. You can just see these guys, see what happens to them. So many dead in just a couple volleys, and it slows them down, breaks up that charge, gives you an opportunity to get more and more volleys off. So by the time they can get to us, we've got about 3 volleys off, and over half the unit has been wiped out. Look at this. And then in a straight fight, these guys are going to be outnumbered and there you go. Look at those spears come out. But they are going to be outnumbered and unable to punch through the numbers and the armor of these Clans of Enedwaith units. It says victory is almost certain. Oh, now it is certain. So as you can see, very devastating. Just look at that. This is a unit that costs, I think, about 1,534 florins. And these guys just destroyed them in a couple volleys. And you can imagine if you had some cheap units here to throw against them, backed up by some of the cheaper armor-piercing units of the Clans of Enedwaith that we're going to take a look at next in just a second here. Next, we have one of the units that I found to be kind of the crux of my infantry fight. These are the Greyflood Axemen. They have great morale, very hard to break. They have not amazing defensive stats. They are quite lightly armored. They are classified, as you can see, as light infantry. They are very vulnerable to cavalry and extremely vulnerable to missiles. They are, however, very cheap and armor-piercing, and quite numerous, actually. That's one of the things that this faction in general has going for it, is that their units tend to have a pretty solid unit count. So you can take losses and still remain in the field while playing as the Clans of the Enedwaith, and rest assured, you are going to take losses. So let's take a little bit of a look at the unit that we're going to be facing here. These are the Loke Flag Rim. They cost significantly more, I believe almost double the amount of our Greyflood Axemen, and they are harder to get. Greyflood Axemen being, I believe, about a mid-tier unit, so available to you fairly early on in the campaign. Pretty good charge bonus. Let's watch what happens. Come on. I believe, to put this in perspective, the Loke Flag Rim are also armor-piercing, and they have about 4 times the defensive stats of our Axemen. But as you can see here, they're actually holding their own very nicely against the superior elite runic unit. We'll speed that up just a little bit. It's a pretty tough battle. We are managing to wrap around them, and the AI is going to do its foolish shenanigans where it tries to feint us out of position. Come on. We hit them one more time, but as you can see, the battle is definitely in our favor. These guys cannot stand against us for very long, and there it is. There's the victory. So this is a very cost-effective, easy-to-obtain unit that dealt some serious damage to one of Rune's more elite heavy infantry frontline units. These guys are excellent at supporting a battle line. I would never put them on the front line, even against other heavy infantry, especially elven infantry, because they will die in droves. They are best used, I found, supporting other units and using other units to take the brunt of the enemy attacks. For example, several units of Moot Wardens, the pikemen that I showed you earlier, backed up by a couple units of these, is more than capable of holding the line against just about any kind of heavy infantry in the game. But let's move on to our next example. Next I have for you the Foresters of Haleth. This is an above average archer unit. They do come equipped with shields, so they have a lot of longevity in combat. They also have an above average damage ratio. They've got about 6 damage on their missile attacks, which is equal and comparable to elite units from other factions such as the Rangers of Nimrodal, and not quite as good as the Elven factions, but again, that is their specialty. However, we do have a lower model count than what you would expect. On average, there are less of the Foresters of Haleth than there are in other units in the army. As I said earlier, a combined arms approach is essential to playing the Clans of the Enedwaith, so you'll probably never take more than, I would recommend about 3 of them. They do come equipped with stakes, so you do have some options when fighting the heavier cavalry of other factions, because you do not, as the Clans of the Enedwaith, have access to anything other than a very, very light unit of cavalry, as well as some cavalry skirmishers. You cannot stand up in a fight with heavy cavalry from other factions. It's one of the biggest drawbacks of the Clans of the Enedwaith. However, these guys do help kind of give you some tactical options in terms of facing heavy cavalry factions such as Rohan or Dol Amroth. So against us today we have a unit of Lorien archers. Very similar stats to us. They do a lot more damage. I believe they have about 11 missile damage. We have 6. Unfortunately, they're not sitting in loose formation because the AI is not very smart. But we're going to go ahead and get into a shooting match between these guys. And these guys are, in terms of damage, they are much better than our units and definitely better than most of the archer units in the game. So you can see that we are not taking casualties proportionate to the number that they are taking. That is because our shields are protecting us a little bit from the incoming arrow fire, making these guys a very good investment. They will stick around as long as you can protect them from cavalry. Of course, like other archer units, except some of the heavier elven archers, or the skirmisher units like the Guardians of the Enedwaith, I believe that was the name of the unit I showed you earlier, they are very vulnerable to cavalry charges. But as you can see here, not a very equal exchange for the elves. We're doing a lot of damage to them. They are a number of models behind, just about like 20 or so models, if not more. So this is going to be a fight that these elven archers actually lose, and lose quite handily. So that should give you just a little bit of an idea of how useful the Foresters of Haleth can be, especially when fighting other archer units. Their biggest advantage is, of course, their high attack, as well as the fact that they have a shield. I would say the shield is really the decisive factor when fighting other missile units, because it just gives them such a huge edge, and not very many units in this game have access to shielded archer units. So let's move on to our 4th and final example. So the final unit I want to call your attention to today are the Moot Keepers. These guys are one of the only real true heavy infantry units available to this faction. They've got above average attack values, about average attack, or rather defense values. You can see their stats up there in the corner of the screen. They have 9 attack, which is very good, actually. It's actually above average. The Gondor infantry over here only have about 8. They do have more armor. However, these guys are able to inspire the troops around them to greater feats of heroism. That means that any units that you keep near the Moot Keepers will get a morale bonus, which is really their primary use. They are able to hold the line very well against other heavy infantry. Not so much extremely high attack value units, such as Elder Rinway Swordsmen or Haven Guard and things like that. It's very difficult for these guys to stand up to very high damage elite units. However, against the average run-of-the-mill infantry, they will do a very good job of keeping them busy. They will die in quite great numbers because they only have about 15 defense. But that's kind of the price you pay here. As long as you are backing these guys up with something, they can do extremely well for themselves. And of course, as I said, they inspire all the other units around them. So it's very good. They're very good at anchoring your battle line in place. As long as you are able to support them and prevent them from getting outflanked or hit from the rear, they will serve you very, very well. So let's see how they stack up against these Gondor infantry. They have but one more attack. I believe the Gondor infantry have 4 more defense. And they have one. The Gondor infantry have 1 extra troop. This is a basic unit, and Moot Keepers are what I would call probably an elite unit, at least as elite as units for the clans of the Enedwaith go. So they're actually doing quite well here. A lot of that is due to the formation. We do have a wider line than the Gondor troops, which allows us to surround them, which is something you might consider doing because these guys have such high numbers that you are actually able to do that. Though it looks like the Gondor infantry here are starting to push through, and we might end up losing this battle here. But these units have wiped each other out completely, and they're going to stick around for the entire battle. There's no chance of these guys running away on you, and that's not just due to the fact that they have the general unit inside of their unit. It's primarily to do with the fact that they do inspire units around them, and they have high morale themselves, which is one of the things that this faction benefits from quite greatly, is that their units have pretty good morale and really good fatigue. So they can take hits, they can keep coming, and there's enough of them to fill the gaps left in the line when their troops inevitably start to fall. But let's move on to some mixed unit tactics. We're going to go outside of these 4 really core elite units, because most of them are, aside from the Enedwaith or the Great Flood Axemen, they are elite units, so you're not going to be able to spam these on a campaign map in that kind of setting. Obviously, when you're playing multiplayer games, you can tailor your armies a lot more easily to your needs. But let's look at some of their more lackluster units and some things that you can do to try and tip the balance in your favor while playing as these guys. So for my next trick, I have our units pitched against the Elder Inway Lancers. These guys are fearsome heavy cavalry. They can destroy entire units on the charge. They have excellent defense. They have shields. They are just an all-around very, very good unit that can take on just about anything that you can throw at them, aside from perhaps running straight on into pikemen. But even then, you won't lose the entire unit on a charge as you would with lesser equipped, lesser skilled cavalry units. So opposing them, we have the River Elders here. These are probably their best spear unit available to you. I didn't include them in the original kind of showcase because they are very lackluster as a spear unit. And honestly, you won't be taking a ton of them. You're going to be taking them to try and counter some of the cavalry units, but they're not amazing, and they kind of fall apart really easily. I think they have about 8 attack, which is decent for a spear unit, and 14 defense. But you're going to see what happens to them in just a second here, even when braced against a heavy cavalry charge. In the back here, these are the Angren Raiders. These are an excellent tar pit unit against other light infantry, and they do come equipped with javelins. And there's so many of them that they can create a javelin storm really quickly. It's good to try and get them behind your enemy units. Obviously, we're not going to do that with cavalry because cavalry is just so much faster than we are that we'd never be able to outmaneuver them, not on foot. And finally, you have the only melee cav unit available to this faction. These are the Enedwaith Riders. Very, very poor stats, decent charge, mediocre attack value. Your best option is to use these and can just continue to keep them moving. Don't let them get bogged down in a fight against other cavalry because they will die and you will lose that unit extremely quickly. And when I say extremely quickly, I mean I pitched these guys against a unit of Gondor Cav and I lost the entire unit in about 20 seconds. That is how weak they are. Well, let's watch this here. Let's see how well these guys do. But you can just see them just brutalizing these River Elders. But what we need to do is cut them off, get a nice charge in there in the back with our units. As I said, keep them moving, keep those cycle charges coming in and out. You can just see them dying, just dying horrendously to these guys. So we're just trying to keep them in place with our River Elders, try to keep them there, get our allow these units here to get a volley off, but unfortunately they're kind of bugged out at the moment and not doing amazing at throwing the javelins, which is why we brought them in the first place. Come on, guys. You can do it. There we go. Finally. So we would have more troops left if if they had done that in the first place. There's only a couple units left, and we just wiped them out. But if these guys had a little bit quicker on the draw, we might have been able to slow down this charge, and they would have, of course, done less damage to our River Elders in the front. But they wiped them out, and that was obviously this is a flat ground, so this is a good engagement for cavalry. But they are a spear unit; they were braced, which is supposed to turn a little bit of the charge damage back on the charging unit. But it didn't really seem to make a whole lot of difference. So we did lose those units entirely, just complete destruction. But we did manage to come out top because we were able to bring the much superior units of another faction into a kill zone where they aren't able to have an engagement that's favorable to them. And these are all really cheap throwaway units. The fact that we lost 2 units is not a big deal, as they are able to be replaced very quickly. Units like their cavalry are quite plentiful. Units like the River Elders are one of their better units. However, they're not extremely expensive, certainly not in comparison to the Eldar Cav, and the Angren Raiders are just a throwaway tar pit unit, as I said. So let's have just one more example, and then we're going to get into our big finale battle at the end of this on the Fords of Eisen map. So here we're pitching a mixed unit, or a mixed group of light and heavy infantry of the clans of the Enedwaith against the Fist of Lorien. These are 5 units of Elbereth swordsmen, very powerful, extremely high attack values, very well defended, all very heavily armored, more than enough to punch through the comparatively paltry defenses of our Enedwaith units. But as you can see, our formation here, we've got the Moot Keepers in the center because they are reliable. We've got them backed up with a unit of Great Flood Axemen, and of course we have our Moot Wardens on either side, so that we can hold them in the center long enough for these units to destroy the Elbereth swordsmen and start to roll up their lines and crush them and surround them in the center. And of course we have a unit of the Guardians of the Enedwaith, so that we can take advantage of their very powerful javelins to try and weaken one of these flanks. Hopefully we're going to be able to weaken their left, my right, enough that these guys can kill them quickly and can start to roll up their line. So let's see what happens. Oh, look at those javelins. Those are fierce. Those are gigantic too, oh my goodness. Boom. Nice shot off there. Wow, look at that. 25 at least on the charge. One more. So we're going to take these guys. We're going to quickly move them over here. We're going to try and get in behind the Elbereth swordsmen. One of the best reasons that these guys pair so well with the Moot Wardens is that these guys have shields, like I said before. So even if some of your missiles kind of scrape by your pikemen and hit your troops behind you, hit your troops in the right in the face, these guys are not going to take nearly as much damage to that from that kind of micro mistake as other pikemen would. So we're going to pull these guys back. Don't want to let them get caught. We are crushing them on that flank very, very handily. It's a little bit more anybody's game on the rest of the battle line. We are going to try and skirmish these guys to death. See if we can't get a decent charge here to wipe out half this unit, and then go in there with our heavy infantry. Oh, look at that. Maybe we'll get one more volley off. Oh, see, it blunted that charge. They weren't able to keep it up. There it is. Get in there. So many of them dying. Such an effective unit. Such a hard counter to other more powerful heavy infantry units. So over here, we are winning. We're going to be able to turn these guys into the center here. Victory is apparently certain in the center against our Moot Wardens and our Great Flood Axemen. But they're going to do very, very good at holding the line long enough for us to do something decisive with the rest of our army. Let's see how these guys are doing here. Victory is apparently certain. These guys have a pretty hard time standing up to these very powerful heavy infantry units. They are simply a spear unit. They're very versatile, but definitely their biggest strength is their javelins, as you can see here. Just heaps of dead elves. Let's speed this up just a little bit. The balance of power is now firmly in our favor. We are having a bit of a hard time punching through the defenses of these guys, so we're not killing them nearly as quickly as I would like to. In the center, our troops are starting to flag. These guys are just cutting them up. And over here, apparently victory these guys are starting to wrap around on the flanks a little bit, which is where a lot of that is coming from. We're just not managing to kill them quick enough. If we had another couple units of these guys, perhaps we'd be doing a lot better. But you can just see the power of these guys. Despite the fact that they are quite weak in comparison to anything else, we are managing to put up a real good fight here. Oh, it looks like they've managed to sucker us out of position there. Our Moot Wardens. We're going to try and pull some of them back so that we keep them and that we can keep the morale bonus that they confer on our troops. And these Eldred Swordsmen are having a great time, aren't they? They've managed to wrap around the scene of the pikemen here. So you are actually getting to see some of the weaknesses of our troops. Some of the hard counters to them. Obviously, you need to be able to protect the flanks. We should have done that a little bit better. But these guys are still putting up an excellent fight against a very tough, very deadly Lorien shock infantry unit. Uh-oh. Oh, no. Yeah, this is where it starts to fall apart. These guys are going to die in droves now. Oh, there goes the enemy general. What are we doing over here? I think there's just a couple of them left. So we did manage to wipe this unit out here. Oh no, our general. Let's see if we can't hit these guys. Yeah, there's our javelins. Bam. So these guys are going to beat us. However, look at the damage that they've taken. 71% of their infantry units. These guys are so much better than us. There's no reason that we should have been able to do what we did to them. And these guys are much more expensive, much harder to get. These are top tier units against some of our elite units, but comparatively they really don't stand a chance. But you can just see how well these Guardians of Enedwaith are doing. They lost almost the entire unit. Even after the general had died, they still had the morale to stick around and fight it out. We wiped out most of their forces, were destroyed. So you can't win them all, especially not with the clans of the Enedwaith. However, we definitely gave as good as we got. So let's move on to our final example. We're going to be having a climactic battle against Gondor on the Fords of Isen map. I will see you guys in just a moment. Alright guys, how's it going? Alright, so let's take a look here at the disposition of our army, because I chose this position very, very carefully. So of course we have our front line being made up of the Moot Wardens, very reliable, not going to break anytime soon. In the rear we've taken some Angren Raiders so that we can have a little bit of a party with javelins here. It's going to be a huge storm. Behind them they are backed up by Guardians of the Enedwaith. Of course we are going to wait until their heavier infantry gets into the mix so that we can take advantage of their armor piercing trait. We do, of course, have a number of units of Greyflood Axemen, and of course some Moot Keepers. Just a couple of units is really all that you need. And of course they're all backed up, as I said, with the Greyflood Axemen. Very versatile, but quite a vulnerable unit. We've also got our 3 units of Foresters of Haleth, who we have put over here on either flank. We've got 2 on this side, 1 on the other, so that we can create a kill zone essentially in the center here. We also have a single artillery piece, because if you are playing a campaign or a multiplayer battle, chances are you're going to be taking one of these, especially in the campaign. They're just too good to pass up, and we have them positioned very carefully here on this hill, well above our units here, so that they can fire down into the enemy troops and hopefully miss ours most of the time. And that's about it for our army there. It's very, very spammy. We have a lot of the same units, but you just kind of need to go with what works when playing as the clans of the Enedwaith. And we are playing against Gondor. We've got 2 Gondor armies here. We've got a little vanguard of their archers. They have everything except for artillery. They've got spears, they've got axes and armor piercing, they've got heavy infantry, they've got a lot of bows, they've got a couple of lead options, they have javelins, and of course they've got a few units of their own pikemen. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to speed it up. You can see our forces of Haleth in position here, already starting to fire on these on the massed ranks of these Gondor archers. These guys are well hidden across here in loose formation inside of the tree, so they do actually have some protection against counter fire from that blob O archers on the other riverbank. Let's just speed that up just a tad. Yeah, these guys are in a very, very disadvantageous position, which is, of course, what you want to try and force your enemy into when you're playing as the clans of the Enedwaith. So you need to pick your engagements carefully, like I've done here. Because it's going to be very difficult for these Gondor troops to assault us and from across the river here in a frontal assault. And, of course, that's exactly what we want them to do. And if they want to cross the river, they have no other choice. So using these kind of natural barriers and choke points to your advantage is, I think, essential when being successful as the clans of the Enedwaith. And of course, the AI is pretty damn dumb sometimes, so feel free to take advantage of that. You're going to need to. And of course, we're taking a little bit of damage here, but I have no problems keeping these guys on the front lines because their shields do protect them so mightily from counter-archer fire. And we're in just such a good position here to slaughter these Gondor units. Let's see if we can't use our catapult here to great effect. Let's watch. Come on. You know you want to. There we go. And boom! Look at that. Devastation being wreaked in these in the ranks of these Gondor units. But here comes their heavy infantry. The charge is being led by the Fountain Guard. These guys are armor-piercing, heavily armored. They're going to be able to weather the initial arrow storm and get across the river here just fine, completely, well, more or less intact. But we do have, as you can see, all of these surprises waiting for them. And the rest of the Gondor army is just slowly filtering in here. Look at all these. I love the way that these... Oh, there goes a general. Oh, that's some luck right there. That's kind of game-changing right there. But we are in such a good position to deal damage to these guys that it's less of a happy coincidence and more of a likelihood that we kind of created in, or we pushed into being by skillful deployment of our troops and choosing our battles very, very wisely. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to turn that off. Look at that. Oh no, we completely missed. We only managed to take down a single Gondor infantryman. We're going to wait until these guys get just a wee bit closer. You can see our troops are taking some losses here from the arrow fire. One of the Gondor bodyguards is charging right in here because I don't know. I'm going to go ahead and turn off that. Wait for more of these guys to get in here before we start expending our ammunition. We don't want to spend 3 volleys from 3 different units just trying to kill a couple cavalrymen when we have pikes to do that for us. So it looks like these guys are going to come in here. This is going to highlight the weaknesses of other factions' pikemen relative to ours. Because as far as I know, we are the only ones that have shields on our pikemen. Here it comes. Just watch the units fall. This is just a nicely prepared kill zone. Look at that. They're unable to move because they're under such heavy fire. The Gondor units here are going to start rethinking their tactics a little bit. And part of this is, of course, the AI just not being really all that smart and kind of wasting their time while they're in range of our missile troops. But the rest of the Gondor army is pushing across here in gigantic numbers. So now's a good time to try and take some shots at this huge blob of troops right here. The AI has very foolishly clumped up. We're going to take full advantage of that. How are our forces of Haleth doing? Still got pretty decent ammunition. We're going to try and focus all of our missile attacks onto this blob of troops here. Come on, catapult. I want to see some Gondor troops explode. Oh! Devastation! Oh my goodness, that's huge. Gigantic losses, and they're just sitting there taking it. I almost feel bad for them. Yeah, they just don't know what to do with themselves. They're just kind of running back and forth here. Partially, this is an AI screw-up. They just kind of don't know what to do with themselves. Finally, they're going to get into combat with our front line. Oh, one more. Look at that. Oh, they missed. Drat. But this kind of formation, look at this. We're starting to surround these Gondor infantry here. Exactly what we want to be able to do. We've got them pinned between just great walls of spears. There's really nothing that they can do to stop us at this point. Let's see, we got some Moot Wardens in the back. Looks like they managed to sucker these guys out of position, so these guys are now a little bit they're a little bit behind their brothers on the battle line. But now we have a good opportunity here to hit these guards of Osgiliath with some massed javelin fire. And look at that. They just can't stand up to it. These guys are very heavily armored, but just destructive casualties being taken. Just catastrophic. Finally, some more Gondor infantry here is managing to push over. They are going to manage to outflank us, which is why we have reserves. So we're going to take our Greyfoot Axemen, move them over here, try and plug this this gap in the line, which is what they are good for. You don't want them to necessarily be on the front lines. Getting them into a flanking position, as I said, is definitely your best bet, because this flank is going to start to crumble just a little bit. Even at a disadvantage, the Gondor units are managing to deal some pretty astounding damage to these frontline units. We are starting to drop down into the 80s. And part of that is our mass javelin fire hitting our own troops, but largely that has to do with the strength of the Gondor units. So now we can start throwing some of our lighter expendable troops in there as well. Just try to fill this gap and put a cork on this this rising tide of Gondor units that are pushing across the river here. So since these guys are going to sit here and just take it, we're going to take the opportunity to annihilate them with our catapult. And obviously all of your battles are not going to play out this way, but I wanted to show you just kind of what you're going to need to do as the Enedwaith clans in order to pull off a victory against more powerful units. And I think this demonstrates pretty nicely a lot of the mechanics and tactics that we were talking about earlier in the video. Oh, come on! Oh, we just missed. Oh, looks like we did manage to hit them right there. Pretty nasty for these Gondor. There's Lebanon Marines in there as well, so they have. Oh wow, there's more coming in here too. The tide of Gondor troops is just never ending. Okay, so we're gonna save some of our the rest of our catapult ammunition there. These guys are actually managing to kind of push through our front lines. They are giving as good as they got, but it's just not going to be enough for these Gondor troops. But there are still, look at this. There's another wave coming in. They still have reserves that they're throwing into the battle. These are the Axemen of Lasarnak. I think that's how you pronounce that. Very good units, very heavily armored, and they also have armor piercing. Pretty decent numbers as well. So once these troops here start to get their act together, we're going to start seeing a little bit more of a challenge for our Enedwaith troops here. So we are managing to crush these guys, just push them into the center, herding them like sheep into the slaughterhouse. So our foresters of Haleth are now out of ammunition. The Gondor troops over here still have quite a lot, so we're going to take our catapult and just let them do their thing. But we're definitely starting to run out of missiles here, which is a bit of a problem. Move up our Moot Wardens just a little bit so they are in position if we need them. These Gondor units are just trying to hold the line. Oh, we missed. How sad. Yeah, another unit of Lasarnak Axemen coming in. I think they have about 4 units. They just can't seem to get across here, can they? They just can't catch a break. Let's see if we can't hit these guys this time. Oh! There goes the other general. Look at that. Devastating. Just destruction. 52% of their army has already gone down. We have lost 11% of ours. But we are starting to run out of tricks up our sleeve, so we're eventually going to have to take the fight to these Gondor units here. Kaboom. Oh, no. Just shy. Just shy. But that's okay. Looks like we managed to win the battle over here. Of course, the Fountain Guard are the last to die and are not going to run. We are starting to run out of ammunition in our catapult. We're only going to get maybe one more volley off. Oh, that's way too high. That's way too low. Just one more. Just one more, baby. So if you look here, we've got these Fountain Guard are they just won't friggin' die. There's still 11 of them left. Oh, it's going to be our last shot. Oh, we didn't get anybody with it. That's so sad. But we've just wreaked complete and utter havoc in the ranks of the Gondor army here. They are going to start to run out of missiles themselves. It's not going to be too much longer. Okay, so once these guys are down, speed that up just a little bit. There we go. Everyone's cheering. Everyone's happy. So we're going to take our 3 strongest units here, or I guess our 2 strongest units because we can't seem to get them across. Oh no. Maybe we'll just send them all in one big wave, one big tide of troops here. There we go. Put those 2 units in reserve. We're also going to move up our Enedwaith Guardians, try and get these guys into a position where they can throw their volleys into the massed ranks of our enemy troops right there. So we're going to run these guys forward. We kept them in reserve for a very good reason, and we're going to start moving up the rest of our reserve troops here. But let's take a moment and admire the slaughter that happened here. This is like the cream of the Gondor infantry units. There's Fountain Guard, there's Knights or Guards of Osgiliath. There's huge amounts of infantry, just standard Gondor infantry. Some of their powerful heavy units. They're kind of like their bread and butter. We're gonna start to move these guys forward into position here against these guys. We're gonna deny these Axemen of Losarnak a charge, and of course they're gonna have to fight us in a pound-for-pound battle from the front. And we've got our Guardians of the Enedwaith coming over here into a very good position to get a lot of kills, just an absurd amount of kills. Come on, guys, keep moving forward. Move them up as far as we can. Try and give these guys a little bit of cover as they go in. But, hold on. Let's get these guys into position. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Hurry hard. Alright, very good. So we're going to hit these massed ranks of Gondor units here. They're going to start just surging forward at us, so our pike line is not going to be able to stand up forever. We're going to start moving in our reserves. But let's just watch. Just look at the percentages mount as these guys manage to get a very, very good volley off into just this blob of Gondor troops. Yeah, the percentage is just going up by like 1 or 2 every volley. Just such destruction. And this is a very powerful. This is a late game Gondor army, and against a late game Enedwaith army, but they do outnumber us 2 to 1, at the very least. I can just see all of that damage being done to these guys. And of course, we've got our reserves coming in here to try and shore up our line. They are managing to push us back into the water, which is not good. I believe we do get like a combat debuff when inside of the water. I've got another unit. Oh, these guys still have some javelins as well. We're going to move them in if we can. There we go. Get your butts over here. See if we can get a little bit of a sneak peek at just how many Gondor units here were fried by our catapult. Just so many. They're just standing on the charred bodies of their brethren. It's got to be pretty demoralizing. They do, of course, have their own javelins, which looks like they are trying to bring to bear against us. We've got the Lebanon Marines, but they cannot pass our spear wall. Comparatively few troops here holding back just this massive tide of Gondor units. Come on, boys. Do it. So Gondor is starting to give ground a little bit here. We are going to manage to push across there and completely annihilate them, I think. I think we are in a pretty good position to beat these guys. We barely even committed our reserves at all. We did lose a lot of Angren Raiders, but they're cheap. We've still got very healthy units of Moot Wardens. Start to move them up here as well, and back them up with some Greyflood Axemen on the other side of the riverbank. Come on, just one more. Let's watch the storm. Kaboom! Yeah, it seems to be swinging in our favor. It isn't completely one-sided at this point. No, not at all. I'm just extremely impressed with how well this faction can perform when handled properly, given how weak their units are. So they are extremely satisfying to play, very rewarding, but of course they can be very, very frustrating when it feels like there's nothing you can do against a vastly superior force of infantry. So we're going to take our 2 units of Moot Keepers here, and we're going to throw them into the battle against these guys, and we're also going to activate one of our units of Greyflood Axemen. These guys are starting to get really tired, but they're just holding this entire Gondor force back. They're so good at what they do that, given the stats of these units, it's just really, really surprising. Come on, get in there. Oh yeah, here comes the pain. Let's try and speed this up just a tad. It looks like some of these Gondor units might be getting ready to rout. Yeah, there goes the Axemen of Lasarnak, completely destroyed. Probably didn't get too many kills because they can't get close to our units. And this is where the Gondor infantry blob starts to disintegrate. Yeah, a vastly superior force coming in here. We did a good job holding back our troops until they were needed just at the last moment. So we're going to take these guys in here, throw more of them into the battle. I don't expect too many of them to die or for them to really do too much, but the weight of numbers will really start to play against the morale of the Gondor units, and hopefully you can start to rout them. Yeah, you can see another unit of Gondor infantry there, very heavily reduced. That's about to run away. We've got more and more units just trying to run away, trying to save themselves. Look at this destruction. Our missile units are very, very good when you can get them into range. But of course, just to recap everything that we've learned so far. Oh, excuse me, allergy season. It's not fun. But to recap everything that we've learned so far, the clans of the Enedwaith do not have the powerhouse units of other factions. If you try to play them like Gondor, you will lose, and you will lose very quickly and very handily. They do not have answers to heavy cavalry, at least not any reliable ones. It's very difficult for them to stand up to a lot of heavy cavalry. Factions like Dol Amroth and Rohan, for example, are ones you're going to want to try and buddy up with if you can. Orcish factions pose less of a problem because they're just generally not as good. But these guys do have great morale, good numbers, a lot of cheap fodder units that you can use to tar pit enemy armies. They do have limited options for light cavalry, and they do have some skirmishers, some mounted skirmishers, which you didn't see in this. But by and large, the power of this faction lies in their infantry. Let's move these guys forward just a little bit so we can see all the destruction. Go, go, go! Look at that. Just brutal. Complete annihilation of the Gondor troops on the other side here. We managed to push across, and oh, that looks like a friggin' war memorial to a very great Gondor defeat. But yeah, so that's going to be the end of our tactics video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you find this useful. If there's something you would have liked to see done in this video, or if there's units that you think add to this faction as much as the units that I've already showcased, or if you have your own tactics and strategies that you want to share with me, absolutely do so. Leave a comment down in the comment section. And if you guys are just joining us for the first time, do not forget to like and subscribe and leave a comment. So, yeah. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'll see you later. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.